because they got gaslit into thinking, oh, UX, we're never going to show we have value. You're never going to know if my work has any value. I can prove immediately every damn day the immediate, short, and long-term value of all of our work.
What do you wish that people knew about or had a better understanding about your job, your role when it comes to UX?
If I had one wish for that, it would probably be that good UX work, bad UX work is a little iffy. Good UX work has immediate value. It's not long-term value. Yes, there's long-term value, but I think too many people have been giving the messages for years that, oh, it's hard to know the value of UX work, and we're really not going to know for 1,000 years if the UX work was good. No. Thing one, I can tell you that day if the UX work is good, but secondarily, so can my team. When I go back to those stakeholders and I go, look, they love the ideas of your icons, but don't put on more than 3, and you already have 1 on there, that means you get 2 more. That has immediate value because that is going to make them have to change a decision they were in the process of making. And that was X weeks from the time I got that question in our collaborative session where I gather the questions to when they got their answer. That means that has immediate value. We don't have to wait until this is released to the public. We don't have to wait until it's QA'd. This is now immediate value. And I think if people understood and were able to say out loud that both design and research and content and other work have immediate value. I immediately saved engineering so much work by not building something that we know now wouldn't work well for people. I saved the designer work because she didn't have to come up with 27 icons that turns out people don't really want. And so we are usually saving time and money, saving risk, saving waste, saving mistakes, saving failures. But that has value. And not everybody is remembering lately to give that value. They're just saying, oh, but failure is cool. We should fail fast. Okay, but I did business school and I don't remember them telling me your goal is to fail. I really wish people understood that there is value in saving time and money. There is value in talking an internal team out of a bad idea and going in a different direction earlier. These are awkward. These are difficult. These are sometimes unpleasant, but there's immediate value there. The one thing I wish everybody, even some of our own peeps, because they got gaslit into thinking, oh, UX, we're never going to show we have value. You're never going to know if my work has any value. I can prove immediately every damn day the immediate, short, and long-term value of all of our work.
That's a really good point. I don't think we think about how our research results are providing immediate value by perhaps changing direction. Do you have another example with people who are watching this? They may not think about how can I show immediate value in the work that I'm doing?
Obviously, here I'm talking a little bit more about the evaluative research, where we've got a prototype, we're showing it to people, and we're getting that feedback. And that's a good place to start. If your company is not doing research, start with the evaluative. And eventually, when you can show that value, which should be immediate, then you can say, hey, imagine if we did research ahead of time and we actually knew more stuff before we went into ideas or features or designs. I think about generative example. We did a project in early 2023 at Delta CX where we had a startup come to us. They'd been funded and they couldn't find product market fit. They were under pressure to figure out what did they need to build. They had a general idea that I wanted to address a certain topic for a certain audience, but we went out and we did generative research. We didn't evaluate a prototype. We didn't show anyone a Figma file. This was just early discovery generative stuff. And we were able to come back to them with what they asked us to do, which was not just a research report and problem statements. So we had 30 something problem statements, but we had our high level suggestions for solutions for those problem statements. We created a business model for them. We mapped an ecosystem for them. There's a whole mountain of stuff that we did, and we did that in 6 weeks. And that's a company that had been struggling for some time. And so when I think about what is the immediate value of that early research, number one, it told them that the next thing they were about to do, which they told us what their next step was going to be, was the wrong step. So at the very least, we've saved this startup from building something that their target audience absolutely doesn't want, because we've spoken to 35 of those people from all over the country, and they don't want that. They very much don't want that. And so that's a good example, in my opinion, even though it's a little vague because it's a startup in stealth mode, where we can, again, have immediate value by telling that. And also having the case study about how they went out and did coffee shop interviews while we were doing our project. And when we came back for the final discussion and they had done their interviews and we had done ours, they said, well, we just found that everybody wasn't motivated. So we're thinking we need to build a motivation platform. And I said, did you find out why they're not motivated? Well, then everybody's looking at each other and they realized they didn't know why people weren't motivated. And I said, behavioral typology number one is the unmotivated, but they're not unmotivated for a reason you can change. Their life is so effed up right now, they can't focus on this topic. There's nothing you can do to get them focused on this topic. Shit's upside down. You're going to have to wait for their life to settle, and then they'll be in typology 2 or 3. But we don't think you should try to attract that target audience. We think your target audience are typologies 2, 3, 4, and 1 is on this end of the bell curve for these reasons, and 5 is on this end of the bell curve for these reasons. And so I think of that as an example of where we gave a startup a lot of data about the target audience related to this topic and these tasks, where they could make a better decision about the direction to go in. And that's being solution agnostic. That's no idea, hypothesis, no prototype, no dev build.
Right. Yeah. Completely generative research. You brought up something there that made me think, do you know why? I find that people think they know why. We look at analytics, we see they're on this page. This is why. It's like, no.
They're guessing.
Right. Talk a little bit more about how people think they understand the why, but they really don't get to that.
Yeah, people tend to think they understand the why because they come up with a good sounding guess. You know, anybody could make any guess about anybody. You know, why is Debbie wearing a hoodie when it's 80 degrees at her desk? You could make up all kinds of reasons for that. The real reason is I put on my shittiest stained shirt and I didn't want you to see it. But, you know, but without knowing that, people might say, oh, Debbie likes to wear dark colors. Oh, Debbie likes to wear something with her logo on it. Oh, you know, insert thing here. Now, all of these sound pretty good. And so we look at each other in meetings. We go, yeah, that's probably what's going on. We talk about this when I do my behavior trigger slides, which I'm going to do again in a future webinar. I just wrote it down. It's one of my oldies but goodies, but we tend to make up things when we don't know. And if they sound good, we assume they're probably true. And it reminds me of on Instagram, someone sent me an Instagram where some UX researcher I'd never heard of, some junior person was trying to be an influencer, and they said, oh, if you ever see a person touch the back of their neck or touch the back of their ear, they're uncomfortable and you should ask them why they're uncomfortable. And I was like, thing one, that will make people feel extremely scrutinized.
Yeah.
Thing two, I've had a rash behind my ear for about 20 years. If you ever watch my videos, I'm doing this all the time. It is not because I'm uncomfortable. I've got this thing that nothing can kill. But that sounds interesting. That sounds very psychological. That sounds learned. And so someone might say, you know, if you see someone touch the back of their neck or play with their hair or touch their ear, they must be uncomfortable. The problem is we go into a lot of these meetings and we have guesses, assumptions, and opinions that sound logical, sound possible, and we fall in love with them, and we don't treat them as true hypotheses or treat them as assumptions or guesses. We treat them as, well, that's probably true.
Right. That's the difference between a good researcher and a not so great researcher, is surfacing those assumptions and calling out and identifying those assumptions.
I tell people it's the difference between opinions, guesses, and assumptions, and evidence, data, and knowledge. Because even if that is your opinion, what's your evidence or data? How do we really know? Because anybody could make up a reason. Then you could ask, why is Debbie wearing her stained and disgusting shirt when she's recording a show with Jen? That's because Debbie is lazy, but but you could make up other things. I once had a disagreement with a product manager in 2014 when she sent me this email. She said, oh, users are not going to like this thing you designed. And I wrote back and I said, how do you know? And she couldn't answer that because it was really just her opinion. She really just wanted it to look different. And I get that. We all have opinions, we all have design ideas, but we should be going with the evidence-based ones. Even Scrum says be evidence-based. You use, like lots of things from Scrum to business school and other things will say, how about the scientific method? We should be using good evidence for strategies, priorities, and decisions. And yet we mostly go by opinions, guesses, and assumptions.
Yeah, it's easier, right?
But then we're fighting over it. So on the surface, it's easier. But if you say, look, the user didn't do this thing because they're lazy and we have to motivate them. And I say, no, the user didn't do this thing because they're broke and we have to help them save money. And someone else says, no, the user didn't do this thing because they had a bad day and we should say something encouraging to them. Which one is it? And so the problem is the opinions feel like an easy way to go, but then we start fighting over the opinions. And because we don't have the evidence, data, and knowledge, but that's where we end up fighting. And I think a lot of people who've been in research and design jobs have been in those fights where we've said, well, we're going to design it like this because of what we know about our users. And someone else will say, but I think they'll like this better. And I go, but that's just an opinion. I've got a slide, the slide with 2 trees on it and my dog. Then you will remember, be careful when you're fighting over opinions. Jen thinks it's this. Debbie thinks it's this. Sally thinks it could be this. Then you don't have the evidence. You have unanswered questions about your users, systems, technology, internal processes, whatever it is. If you are guessing, hypothesizing, you don't know. And that's when you should have the researchers go find out.
Yeah, I was just going to say that very thing. If you had done generative research and answered that question beforehand, there wouldn't be the debate as to what the user wants.
Exactly. If someone had been interviewing me and said, tell me more about why you chose that black hoodie today, then we would know.
And it's over, right? The debate is over, and we can move forward with building a product that answers that need.
Whatever it might be, because a good UX person is solution agnostic. We don't ultimately care what the solution is. It doesn't have to be the idea we had. It doesn't have to be an idea that we thought, or we go into it with no idea. It just has to be right for the users, and we're not the users.
Right. That kind of plays into your philosophy when you talk about good UX folks are solution agnostic. That kind of plays into your mantra of low ego action hero, right?
I hope so. That was something from one of my old books where I'd been hearing a lot from non-UX people. Oh, my UX person is a diva. My UX person is a egomaniac. My UX person, blah, blah, blah. And I just said, we have to be low ego. There's no room in UX for high egos. I'm not sure what job should have high egos. Nobody likes to work with that person, especially since we're often presenting bad news and opposing viewpoints. We've really got to make sure it comes off as being not related to, well, I like it this way or something ego-based. But we also have to kind of save the day. And that's where I said action hero. That's where I came up with low ego action heroes, was really just combining 2 totally separate things and seeing if they worked together, and peanut butter and chocolate do work together. That's how I ended up with low ego action hero, because I want to be low ego about stuff. I don't want to make anything about me, but I also feel like sometimes I got to come in and save the day in a small or large way, but then be low ego about it. You can't be like, look, everybody, I saved the day.
I love that.
Check out all my interviews with industry leaders on BlatzChatz.